Hello friends, this is Mr. K. As some of you may have noticed, I've been working on a special project downstairs in the workshop and around school and at home for several weeks now. And the goal of this video is to finish that project. The project in question is this. It is a Mark 5B helmet from the Halo universe, made out of cardstock, which is like a heavy paper but not cardboard, and lighter cardstock, and then just three other things. Wood glue, which has been mixed with water, and a special green modeling compound, which you can see here, which lets me fill some gaps on the model, and then a motorcycle visor, which I've been detailing to look a little more dimensional and science fiction-y. So let's get started. But first, a bit of catching up. This project started when I found a 3D model and used a program to break it into pieces for printing. I printed it onto cardstock, cut it out, and glued everything together. When I finished the shell, I added extra pieces to the inside of the entire helmet. I also added green modeling epoxy to some joints that needed extra reinforcement. Finally, I added layers of overlapped lighter cardstock to clean up the interior and add even more strength. I cut out the visor after this, but before I added the visor, I checked reference pictures and realized that my helmet was missing a lot of details. I used Illustrator to modify a bunch of parts, then cut them with the laser cutter. These vents, for example, were made by gluing 10 layers of cardstock together. Details really take projects like this to the next level and bring props to life. Because the visor didn't fit properly, I needed to cut out parts around the visor and design new seal elements. This took a rather long time. I added a pattern to the visor, but quickly learned that spray paint doesn't stick well to this material and ended up redoing this work later. When I was sure I didn't need to add more card, I decided to spray the helmet with a thin coat of white paint to help me spot areas that needed cleaning up. I realized that the front of the visor didn't look right, especially when compared to reference artwork, and decided to make a new one rather than moving ahead. I designed components in Illustrator, laser cut lots of pieces, glued them together, cut out that front visor piece, and slowly added my new parts to build out the new seal. I used green epoxy to fill the remaining gaps and was able to shave that down to look just like the other armor elements. At this point, I sprayed the entire helmet with a dark gray and almost dropped my phone in the process. I wet sanded the helmet to smooth out some of the sharper edges and rough paint before adding more black and gray paint. Then a coat of light gray. I decided the final finish would be green, and bought 3 colors to apply. The first layer was lighter, and when dry, I applied Vaseline to some areas. This masks the paint, and the goal was to simulate paint chips through the outer layers. So later in this project, I would be able to wipe off the places where there was Vaseline because the outer layers of paint would not stick to it. The middle layer was a brighter green, and my hope was that it would help the final layer be a more dynamic shade. This paint is pretty opaque, and I won't really know if it worked unless I make additional pieces and test leaving that color out. The final coat of paint was actually a little different than I expected after testing, but I thought it would be correct after weathering. Since I was happy with the color, I went ahead and removed the masking tape. Spray paint is pretty quick to apply, but was only possible because I spent lots of time carefully masking surfaces where the paint wasn't supposed to go. I resprayed the visor after cleaning it off, then took the helmet home to add detail. I brushed on black and brown paint, then wiped it off in a slow process to add the appearance of wear and dirt to the armor. Once everything was acceptably dirty, I still had to remove the glossy shine from the paint, and I did that by brushing on a few layers of matte varnish. This unified the finish and took away the new appearance of the green paint, resulting in a helmet that appears to have been well worn. This was a longer project than I expected or intended, with lots of problems to solve and processes I would change if I did it again. In the end though, I'm pretty thrilled with the result. This is easily my favorite costume project and really shows what's possible with a few simple materials.